The British Isles are not yet British, for they first must be Danish. Between the Roman Empire and William the Conqueror, there came the Vikings. The great heathen army has marched into Britain and brought worse than war upon the land. They have brought bureaucracy. The law of the Danes shall rule from the Thames of London to Scotland itself, paving the way for the rise of the kings of England and forever changing the fabric of English culture. It is the Danelaw, and this is her story. Hello and welcome to the Historical Humans podcast. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-host, Colum Coleman. Unfortunately, the Pinkertons have yet again gotten Aaron. While we currently negotiate for his return, we shall be talking about the Danelaw, going into the nitty-gritty of some historical laws.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we try to set the Weir Guild for Aaron, a term that will come up later, so do pay attention for that.
I hate that joke.
Yeah. We are, and as I break down my co-host for the day, we will be talking about the Danelaw. And I'm just going to start off with a long list of disclaimers that come with explaining what this was. Because it was many, many things. It was all written down by the English, and the English were being notoriously English about how they were doing it, which means that everyone from Scandinavia or Denmark is going to be referred to as a Dane because we cannot prove they weren't.
So it's yet another emblematic reason that of English culture that not even English culture is English in nature.
No. And they're so self-centered about it that they decide that everyone who's not them must be the same category. It gets really funny and really messy. But yeah, no, the Danelaw here, as it is so lovingly called, it's both a region in the British Isles and a legal code. It's two different things, and so it has multiple lifespans. And what it did as a region was it comprised the eastern half of England and the southeast chunk of Scotland. It's formally acknowledged as everything between the Tees and the Thames, between these two rivers. And it has a very tumultuous history that we get into throughout all of this. Fun fact, English people and Vikings will constantly make war on each other, just constantly.
Naturally. Again, if there's anything more British than being British, it's causing war and fighting.
Yeah. It's not being, it's letting the British people not actually be British.
And I will preface this by saying, unfortunately, my family trees do end up intertwined in this mess, and it is very interesting for me.
Yes, he's very proud. He's very proud. We're going to kick the shit out of his grandparents.
Hey, this is like super, super, super great, ultra mega, like 28 times grandparents.
They're British royals. The family tree is a beanstalk. One that curves back on itself several times.
And there is a reason I currently speak American, so let's just leave it at that.
But anyway, yep. The Danelaw, the part that we're going to be talking about for this bit of British history, lasted from the 9th to the 11th centuries. And this time period in particular is very hazy, very shrouded in mystery. There's not a lot of people writing things down and a lot more of people murdering each other, which means that what little gets written down is often confused and after the fact. There's a lot of kings here that have incomplete reigns, hazy national borders, and very vague accomplishments that could mean anything from we just stopped fighting to I killed them and everyone who spoke their language. We just don't know. And that's what makes it fun. To make matters worse with dealing with a lot of the information here is no one who lived during this time lived under the Danelaw. That wasn't a term they used. it was applied later on in the later part of the medieval period as a way that the British people viewed their history after it had happened. And so this tells a lot more about how medieval Britons thought about their past than what was actually going on, which means that we are going to contradict ourselves constantly, and it's going to be great.
Oh, naturally.
Because you can't tell a lie if you tell it both ways. That's not legal advice. I'm being informed right now that that cannot be legal advice under any circumstances.
Oh, you love to see it.
But, yep. But our story begins, it begins as is fitting, in the year 865 with the Great Heathen Army. This is the time where the foreigners invade England. England takes it so personally that they decide to build a massive empire and make sure no one can ever live to invade them again.
Those Viking raids really played a part in this whole ordeal.
Yep. We get our first main character off the bat with this great heathen army. He is Ragnar Lodbrok. He leads the Nordic invasion of England. We will never talk about him again because he does not really live to see it through. What he does do is depose every single king in England, with one exception. And I believe that is the King of Wessex, known as Alfred the Great. Because literally everyone else is dead and you survived. Hooray.
Yay. We did it. We saved the village.
Yep. Alfred will come back repeatedly. Almost like a cockroach that you literally cannot step on. He is unkillable. These people try. These people really do try.
As long as they try and fail, then that's all that really matters, right?
It's like, I mean, this guy's got more lives than Rasputin. That's how bad this is. This great heathen army, this invasion, comes to an end with a partition between Alfred of Wessex and a man named Guthrum, who's running the Norse forces for the most part at this time. And they basically make a really one-sided division. Northern England, Central England, and Eastern England all now belong to Guthrum and his Norsemen. Southern and Western England go to Alfred, meaning that, like, most of England is gone at this point.
Just turned into England.
Yep. And this is where the Danelaw begins, with this treaty between Alfred and Guthrum, because this is the territorial acknowledgement of the Danelaw. The boundaries that get set here are more or less the boundaries of the Danelaw. It doesn't ever get bigger than this. It will shrink, it will grow and shrink, but this is kind of its like maximum capacity. They never really managed to take out the remainder of Wessex. They never managed to invade the Welsh, and they certainly never get up into Scotland. Not really. They kind of just stay where they are. It's really unfortunate. They start big and then they just can't go anywhere with it.
Oh, you love to see it. You really love to see it.
Yep. Now, this Danelaw lasts for about 75 years. Technically, the last bit of the Danelaw is 954, with Eric Bloodaxe of York getting deposed.
Okay, but that's a badass name. If your name is Eric Bloodaxe, you know the one thing this man is known for.
Yes. So do his people. It does not go well for this man. We do get to talk about him more later, as well as a couple other people who managed to extend the Danelaw. There's a man named Sven Forkbeard and King Nut, who both come in much later than Blood Axe, and they rebuild the Danelaw. They restore it. But yeah, for the most part, the Danelaw really collapses and then resurges and then collapses. It kind of has this, sort of like tides of the ocean effect to it. And the reason it gets listed as like persisting so much is because of the fact that it's also a legal code. It doesn't need territorial integrity or even sovereignty. If the kings of England just don't get rid of it, they don't rewrite the laws, and it's still technically the laws. That's kind of the little fun bit of this little quirk of history here. But it also does this one little bit where it serves as the distinction between English and Danish worlds in Britain, as the Vikings and their various Scandinavians all come over, and they have their cultural area, and the English kind of have theirs as well. And the Danes will become English very quickly, but they'll also still be very distinctly Danish at the same time. It's pretty interesting how they pull that off, that tightrope.
Just it's interesting to me how much the Viking culture had actually influenced Britain as a whole. And it's really interesting too, just seeing all the long-term stuff. Like, we're going to eventually talk about the boroughs, and that's one thing I want to highlight a lot of how so much of this is still in place in the modern era over 1,000 years later.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the Danelaw too, being this block, it's only seen as a unified block from the outside. When it's formed as 5 separate kingdoms, each of which have their own individual fiefdoms within it. You have what's lovingly named, with such English creativity, the Eastern Danelaw, the Northern Danelaw, the Southern Danelaw, the Outer Danelaw, and then the really interesting one, which is called the 5 Boroughs, because that's the one that like people actually cared about. So they actually bothered to write down who was in charge of what city and what was going on here.
This comes during a time where a lot of history wasn't written down like we think about it today, where during this time period, pretty much the only literate folk were those in charge or those who ran the monasteries. The monks were the most literate of the bunch, and they would only write down things that pertain to them, which is also very interesting because that's how we know a lot about the Vikings, because every time the Viking longship would show up on the shores, the monks would quickly start writing down what they experienced.
Yeah. And unfortunately, for starting off the Danelaw here, some fella named Guthrum has gone around killing these people for the past year or so. So it's not looking good. It's not looking good. The literacy rate in England's dropping. But
so it's almost to its normal level today.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, the 5 boroughs is kind of the really important one. Northern Danelaw will be the most enduring, but the 5 boroughs is the heart of the Danelaw. It's what's also known as Danish Mercia. It's the most Danish part of the Danelaw. And it's comprised of the 5 boroughs, which are these 5 major cities that were the 5 cities where the various jarls of the 5 boroughs set up their military bases. Justin, would you like to say them? Because otherwise I'm going to speak American.
Yes, we had a nice little conversation before the recording about the proper pronunciation. The 5 boroughs are also known as the Danish Mercia, which comprise 5 major cities that exist today, which include Leicester. The Brits are going to appreciate the pronunciation of that.
Not how you spell that.
There's a lot of extra letters, but it's Leicester. There's Nottingham, there's Derby, there's Stamford, and there's Lincoln.
Yep.
A couple of those are not pronounced how they're spelled, but we're going to just chalk that up to being a Danish issue, not a British one.
Yeah. They looked like they were written by a Welshman.
He just...
that is the most insulting thing I can say to something that's at the heart of England.
It's just like, if you've ever played Scrabble, sometimes you just got to throw a few extra letters into words to try and get a higher score. That's all they were doing here. They're just trying to get the highest score possible.
Freaking second grader.
uh, we love a good Jarl, though. And those cities actually still persist to this day, which is also incredible considering thousands of years old, had Viking lineage and heritage, and they're still prosperizing today.
Yeah, and that's one, and that's why this region of the Danelaw is considered the most important one, is because even though it gets reincorporated into England and gets put back under English rule in the 10th century, its nobility retain their Danish culture, their Viking roots under English rule, and that endures all the way up until the invasion of William the Conqueror. So they, this is the part where that culture lasts the longest, even if it's not the most independent nation.
So of course it's a Norman, it's a Frenchman coming to give more culture to England.
Well, yes, the Frenchmen must change the culture of England. How else would the English know what they hate?
All right, now go on to explain why your weregild joke from earlier was so poor for Aaron.
Yeah. So the one other big thing it does is it establishes what's called the weregild, which is a sort of common law to be applied across all of England, all the English territories, whether they're Danish ruled, whether they're English ruled. And it is literally the man price. Guild is price, where is man? You ever see a werewolf? That's the wolf man. And what this did was it set a standardized code of punishments for crimes so that you couldn't commit a crime on one side of a lordship's border in one fiefdom, hop the border and get a lighter sentence. This sort of universal punishment, the same thing applied regardless of the ethnicity of the perpetrator or the victim. And it's most directly seen in the price to be paid for killing a person. Because these are Vikings, murder is punishable with a fine.
It's also very, very interesting because when you look at this time period in retrospect, you see where a lot of the crimes were committed and they were right on the borders of these different boroughs. So people would go on, commit a crime or a murder in one borough, and then instantly hop to the other and go, "You can't get me, you can't get me." Yep. And they go, "Darn, because of the law, we can't get him."
Yep. Yeah, the American equivalent of this is the Hatfield and McCoy dispute, where there was a state line between these two families who hated each other. And because the crimes were committed on one side of the line and not the other, there was nothing that people could do on one side of the line to punish people from the other side. So there was a lot of jumping borders to kill each other and or abducting people to have them tried and executed. And the Weregild is the Viking solution to put a stop to that.
Oh, God. Naturally.
Yeah. And, being Vikings, of course, you kill someone, you owe me money.
So what is the price of Aaron? Let's put the price on his life.
Yeah, what should Aaron's Weregild be? Leave your number in the comments below. Feel free to use outdated currency so we don't know what you're actually saying.
I'm gonna go with at least 5 denarii.
Oh, you're going with the denarii? Going off with the denarii early, I see. Yeah, I'm not sure what we should give him. I'm not sure what man price we should give him. I'm on the do not negotiate side of this fence.
Oh, come on. I thought 5 denarii is a pretty good marker for this. Especially given your and his classical upbringings.
You know what? Tell you what. I'll I'll give 10 drachma for him.
Drachma. Okay, okay.
We'll do the Greek one. He's the Hellene on this expedition here. He can, he can have drachma as a freaking Phil Hellene over there. But yeah, so this is the law. This is what this weird guild is what sort of makes the Danelaw a culturally enduring practice. Because this, you know, it sort of applies to everywhere. So when the kings of England beat back the Danes and take over England again, there's no real reason to get rid of it.
Naturally. No real reason to get rid of it whatsoever.
Yeah. The other big thing that the Danelaw does is it sets up the kingdom of Wessex for success. Prior to the Danes coming in and shaking everything up, there were a lot of other kingdoms in England besides Wessex, besides the West Saxons. And they were all kind of in a quid pro quo power balance. But because the Danes come in and they take over, they take out the kings of York, they take out Northumbria, they take out Mercia, Wessex is all that's standing except for Wales, which means that it's on Wessex to rebuild or die. And they, as the last man standing, rebuild.
What can I say? My ancestors, they really they were able to share, they were able to unify, but the egos always got in the way.
Yep. Yep. Now, what happens is with his peace treaty with the Danes of the Danelaw, King Alfred of Wessex here has a free hand with his, eastern border secured to just invade southern Wales. Now, he does a lot of invading, not of the independent Welsh kingdom, but of these client states that used to belong to Mercia. Except Mercia no longer exists. It's the 5 boroughs of the Danelaw right now. So who is to protect them but the last English king standing? As part of doing this, he encounters King Ethelred of Mercia, who's got this tiny little domain living out here as this sort of Welsh king. And the two of them have a bromance.
But see, Ethelred is one of my direct ancestors.
Yeah. And they form a very strong alliance as they realize that as two semi-political entities, they can form this Batman and Robin tag team where one guy will go and beat the shit out of something and the other guy will swoop in to save it and take over for the grateful population. They do this to London in the 880s.
I mean, as you should realistically, but that's no better example of my family's heritage and lineage than just being handed a position of power like that and going, "All right, yeah, we're you got good vibes. Here you go.
Yep.
Here's a whole city of your own."
Yeah. So throughout the 880s, they start pushing back into the Danes of the Danelaw because it's all divided up. It's all these little jarls under these 5 kingdoms. So there's not really a coordinated response like there was during the Great Heathen Army, where you had dozens of jarls all operating under unified leadership to seize land. And so they start chipping away at it. They take London. Alfred takes it and he gives it to Ethelred as like a personal gift. And this, in return, Alfred is proclaimed to the title of Rex Anglorum. He's no longer king of Wessex. He's not king of the West Saxons. He's king of the Angles. He is the king of all Englishmen because he can take a city from a foreign power, the Danes, and gift it to another English king without fear of weakness.
That is a really badass title, though, of Rex Anglorum.
Yeah. And this is where the kings of England begin. They begin with Alfred. And Alfred is not one to do things in half measures here. So in addition to making Ethelred the Lord and King of London, he also makes sure that Ethelred is family by marrying one of his daughters to Ethelred there. And this guarantees that anyone attempting to claim lordship of London, anyone attempting to claim rights to the kingdom of Mercia, will be related to the Rex Anglorum, to this king of Wessex. He's basically ensuring that no matter who is ruling, as long as they're of English blood, they're related to him.
I mean, I respect it. I respect the hell out of it. If you can really secure your bloodline like that, good on you.
Yep. Unfortunately, Alfred does come down with a case of the dead. And this is where the tangled web he wove falls apart. Because everyone is related to the king, to the Rex Anglorum here, to King Alfred the Great. Everyone has a claim to his crown.
I mean, everyone's related at the end of the day, am I right?
Yeah, sure. The two big contenders, surprisingly enough, do not include Ethelred. Ethelred is smart. He stays out of this. Instead, you have Aethelwold, Alfred's older brother, who got passed on for the crown when Alfred became king. And you have Alfred's son, Edward. Edward wins the home front because Aethelwold is much more tolerant of the Danes than Edward is. The big political issue of the day is, how do we deal with the Danelaw? Edward's response is destroy it, and Ethelwold's is accept it exists and work with it. This kind of pisses off most of the English people, and so Edward's able to kick Aethelwold out really quickly.
Of course, because how dare they? How dare they try and preach some level of tolerance and equality?
Yeah, cooperate with these foreigners as if they are equals.
Dead.
The
Dead.
least English thing said ever. Now, this does have a bit of problem for Edward, as it does backfire on him. Because Aethelwold is more tolerant of the Danes, and the Danelaw people know this. So he flees to Jorvik, which is what the Danish called their kingdom of Northumbria. They named it after what they thought was the pronunciation of York, which was its capital city.
York.
Yep. Danish York is Jorvik. And the Jorvik people give Aethelwold an army. And being a Viking army, it is vastly superior in this day and age to anything Edward and his Englishmen can muster. And so the Danes win decisively. They crush Edward's army. They scatter what little forces remain. They turn his allies against him. His own court betrays him. And, oh, wait, what's that? King Ethelwald is lying dead in the River Holme in 902. They get their puppet king killed because they're so aggressive.
He's just floating there. It's a sacrifice I was willing to make.
And because of this, they fail. They no longer have a puppet to install on the throne of Wessex. Edward wins the Civil War by default as the Northumbrians just kind of go home.
Our puppet's dead. What do we do now? Oh, I guess I'll just go home.
Well, fuck it. Who wants to live here?
This place is a shithole.
All I can see are goats.
Oh, hi, those aren't our goats. Those are our wives.
Yep. And basically, all of the like military gains, all of the political strategies, all of this, which was executed flawlessly by the Jorvik army, just evaporates because there's no Ethelwald. There's no rightful heir to put on the throne. Edward is the only born son of Alfred, and he's the last male descendant that's not an in-law, so he's the only choice. He gets the throne. This is where Edward proves he's a little too smart for everyone else around him, because he could pursue the Danes. His army has reformed. His support is unanimous now. He could say, I'm taking York. The kingdom of Jorvik must fall. This is war. And everyone would agree he's got perfect cause. Instead, he makes peace.
Bastard.
Something the Vikings should never have agreed to. See,
make peace.
The Danish king of East Anglia is also dead in the river Holm in 902 with Aethelwald. So they're looking for any reprieve so that they can scramble for leadership among their jarls. And Edward is happy to give them. His army will not march into the Danelaw if the Danes sign this little treaty encouraging Englishmen to live in Danish territory and own land. To which the Danes agree, because these people aren't farmers. They don't know what to do with England.
If that's...
And so it begins.
How do you get into such a position where you're like, yes, I control this territory, but I actually have no idea what to do. I didn't think I'd get this far.
They're fishermen and raiders. They don't know. They're not prepared for this level of pastoral farmland. They're not prepared for this settled life. They don't have enough experienced people with them. They don't have enough people with them, period.
Poor
There's only so many human beings that only so many people fit in a long ship. But yeah, no, and this is the Danes think this is a pretty decent agreement. They get a lot out of it, and Edward also concedes to the Danes some of the territory that were held by the people who backed Aethelwald. So the Danes get to come out of this war saying, we won. We have a peace treaty with this king of England. We have a resettlement policy, and we are the jarls of more land. King Edward gets to begin planting wealthy, loyal Englishmen inside Danish territory. The sort of people that would own land, make money, maybe hold minor bits of political power, be privy to things like the gathering of Danish armies. Do you see how he begins to win here? Because it's pretty obvious. And this creates the sort of patchwork of English and Danish burghs of lands within the Danelaw. And these burghs, these various boroughs, they some of them are still around. Some of these territorial lines, they haven't changed in the last last 1100 years.
I mean, why change it if you don't need to? The
Yep.
crazy thing for me though is the fact that not only does Edward convert the boroughs into English rule, but he also establishes his fortress at Buckingham. And if Buckingham may sound familiar, it's because it is the current site location of Buckingham Palace, though it went
Yep.
through a major renovation.
Yeah. Yeah. So what he does actually to convert the five boroughs to English rule is not only has there been like a decade of just English settlement, making it more and more English, but his fortress at Buckingham makes it very clear that he has the military advantage on all five boroughs and could theoretically take them out. So rather than deal with that, they just kind of agree to be English, especially because Edward doesn't appear to have any prescriptions against Danish heritage or culture. They're still more or less allowed to speak their language among themselves, rule with their customs. He doesn't want to replace the Danelaw. He just wants to put himself on top of it.
And if
And
that's not a real man of culture and of privilege, I don't
yeah.
know what is.
And the Vikings are for the most part okay with that. Because, who cares what your Jarl's name is? Sure, he's some weirdo named Edward, but he's no Sven, but what are you gonna do with that? Right? Yeah.
He's not a Sven, but yeah, he makes
Yeah.
some good points, and we're under the same ruler at the end of the day, so
Yeah.
we're good.
End of the day to keep doing this. He also manages to just take over Bedford by convincing all the Vikings there that they're better off getting on a boat and sailing to literally anywhere else on Earth than they are fighting him for control of England. This man was clever. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to negotiate. He knew how to convince you that you were already defeated before you even tried to fight him.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not worth fighting. You're going to lose at the end of it. You might as well just surrender now, so that way we don't even have to go that far.
Yep. And the cornerstone, the reason why he's able to pull all this off isn't because he's a pretty boy and a sweet talker. It's something the Vikings are very good at themselves. It's fear. See, in 910, before he does all this stuff, setting up Buckingham Palace, subduing the five boroughs, winning Bedford, he has a little battle called the Battle of Tettenhall. This is where he kills the three kings of Northumbria and all the Danish lords of Jorvik at once.
Oh, that is a great power move. That is showing if you stand against me, you too shall fall.
Yeah, imagine wiping out the entire presidential cabinet and every governor of a U.S. state in one day. That is what this man did to these people.
Please don't give anyone any more ideas.
Relax, it's not possible. There's over 50 locations. You can't hit them all at once.
Oh no.
Don't try it. But yeah, this is that's just how that devastation. That's how unfathomably, unthinkably terrifying Edward is to the rest of the Vikings. That he just annihilated their entire concept of government in one day.
Good for him. Good for him. That's that is one way to really make just fear emulate out of anyone, because who's going to stand up against that? People are always going to say, "Oh yeah, I would have stood up against it. Oh yeah, I would have done something." But in reality, when he kills all of the governors, he kills the cabinet, he kills the line of succession, and then says, "Who is going to stand in my way? Little Joe Schmo down the street isn't going to touch him."
Yeah, no. The mayor of Buttonsville is not going to be the leader of the revolution.
No, and all the congressmen are looking at each other going, "What the heck is going on? I'm not going to say anything. I'm not coming. I'm not going next."
Yeah, no. It's bad. It's bad. He doesn't stop his work. from 917 to 919, he takes over all of the Danelaw south of the Humber, which is this bay that turns into a river, and it's just south of York and just north of Sheffield. For those of you that understand English geography, because I do not, for those of you who are like normal people in the rest of the world, what this means is that he controls at least 2/3 of the Danelaw.
I mean, Sheffield and York are on the northeastern part of the English Isle, so it pretty much is everything from like south of London all the way north. Not quite to the border of Scotland, but it's not all that far off.
Yeah, no, it's not all far off. Like it's like Jorvik, this last Danish kingdom, controls like the southeasternmost part of what is now considered Scotland, and like the northeasternmost part of what is considered England. And it's not huge. It's not a huge territory, but it is a respectable medieval English kingdom nonetheless. And as the kingdom of Jorvik in Northumbria, it would last until 954. It technically gets conquered by the English kings in 937, but it does this little thing I like to call being Irish, where it rebels so frequently, there is almost no rule of law.
You love to see it.
Yeah, you love to see. Yeah, it's basically this thing, and this little Jorvik here. Not only is it a constant breakaway state, but it has this really fun habit of starting civil wars within the rest of the English domain.
Well, if they're able to do it, then I want to do it.
No, not even that. They just break away and declare someone else the true king of England. That person gets an army. People start backing him. Civil war.
Oh no!
They do they do the thing that they tried to do to Edward over and over again, where they just take they just take an Ethelwald and they just say, "You're king now."
Speaking
and
of
then
which,
fight it out.
Let's go to England. If only we could find someone who's got a good claim to the throne and someone that we could get to back. I think the Mountbattens have had it too good for too long.
Oh yeah, here we go. Now the best part of all this is these Danish people who keep starting these rebellions. They have some very strong popular backing among the Northumbrians, because the Northumbrians would rather be ruled by Danish foreigners than by any one of those prissy little English kings to the south. They are Northmen and they will not bow to the southern crown.
So nothing has changed. It has been 1,000 years and nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Yep. They find more in common with the Danes than their old enemies, the kings of Wessex.
Oh my God. Of course they do.
Now, the last time this happened is the Danish ruler Eric Bloodaxe.
Still a badass name.
Yep. He rises to power in 948 during the ascension of King Edred. Now, King Edred gets the throne in 946, but this being medieval times, news is slow and the ability to assert rule is slow. So it takes 2 years before anyone realizes what's happened, and Eric Bloodaxe is in charge.
Why was Eric Bloodaxe in this area to begin with? Pray tell.
Oh, simple. He's one of those people who's not Danish, but keeps getting called Danes because the English are hella racist right now. He'd been kicked out as Jarl in Norway because apparently he was a bloodthirsty, despotic tyrant.
Gee, it's crazy. So he got kicked out of Norway and came over to England.
Yep. So they sent him to Scandinavian Australia, which is England.
Oh God, humans have never changed.
Yep. And Eric Bloodaxe starts this rebellion, kicks it off in 948, lasts until 954 when he's betrayed by his own people. And the reason this happens is, despite the fact that he wins serious military victories against Edred, Northumbria is falling apart. Edred recognizes he can't beat Bloodaxe here. So he decides that every time he marches north, he's killing everyone and burning everything to the ground. And Northumbria can't sustain itself under this scorched earth policy. Especially since Mr. Bloodaxe here has not learned his lesson from Scandinavia and is continue to meet minor inconvenience with beheading.
You really hate to see someone living out your dreams.
Yeah, no. And so in 954, he is forced to flee Northumbria, and the Danelaw as a political entity ends with him. It is now a cultural affair, existing as this sort of middle management layer of nobility between the English kings and the English peasantry. Yet it's going to kind of continue this way. It's going to have a cultural impact. It's going to have its legal precedent. It's going to continue to be an active part of England until the 11th century, until sometime between 1066 and 1087, which is the reign of William the Conqueror. Willie Boy here, he replaces this Nordic culture among the nobility of England with his own Norman French culture. This is the culture that was familiar to William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror is rewarding those loyal to him by replacing everyone with people from his retinue. And it's at this time that the Danish customs, such as the weregild, that lovely little man price, get subsumed by the Norman way of doing things. As William the Conqueror brings his own set of laws to sort of replace everything. However, this persistence up until William the Conqueror, it's not just the English not really wanting to try and fix something that isn't broken or not changing with the times. It's also because the Danelaw is kind of like a zombie. It doesn't stay dead. It has these lovely resurgencies, thanks to two kings. The first is a man called Sven Forkbeard.
Beautiful name. You love to hear it.
Yeah. He was named because he split his beard into two separate beards. So his beard forked like a lizard's tongue.
Good old split beard.
Yeah. Now, Sven here was the son of Harold Bluetooth of Denmark.
Another great name. Man, we really are missing out on these epic names.
Yeah. Now, Harold Bluetooth is very famous not only for being a Viking warlord, but also for being the man for which the Bluetooth technology is named.
The Bluetooth symbol is literally his name spelled out in the Danish runes.
Yep. What's dead may never die. Now, Sven is what you might call the prodigal son. He does not get along with his father, and Harold, being Harold, wins a little civil war with his son and kicks him out. So Sven follows in the footsteps of Eric Bloodaxe and goes to Viking Australia, aka England. And in the 990s, he launches his invasion. There, he defeats a man named Ethelred the Unready and obtains from him the Danegold, which is a tax Ethelred levies against his people to pay the Danes to stay the hell out of England.
Look, if we just bribe them, then they're not going to mess with us. We're not going to do anything.
This does not happen. Sven takes the money and uses it to fund his re-invasion of England.
He took the payments and used it to pay.
Yeah.
Well, one, I just want to circle back to Ethelred the Unready. What
Yep.
a hilarious nickname for historical. I mean, you've
Yep.
got some really interesting ones. Like you get Vlad the Impaler. There's a million greats out
Yep.
there, but
Yep.
there is
Suleiman the
only one
Magnificent.
Unready.
Yeah. Now, what's fun about this is it's actually not a condemnation on Ethelred, though it should be. The original meaning of his title means the ill-advised, as in his cabinet of ministers are all freaking incompetents,
They let him
as is
down.
seen by a decision he makes in response to um Sven here not staying out of England. See, Ethelred decides that if he can't pay the Danes off, he will eliminate their breed from the earth.
That
He
is.
orders the massacre of every Danish person in England. This includes Sven's own sister, Gunhilde, in the year 1002.
Gunhilda. How dare he kill Gunhilda?
This is seen as a universally bad move, as Sven gets some very strong support for invading England afterwards. So much so that in 1013, he has enough backing to take the English throne. And this act technically resurrects the Danelaw, as England is once again being ruled by the Danes. Unfortunately for Sven, there's this little thing called death, and it catches up with him 5 weeks later in the beginning of 1014.
Hate when that happens. It always comes for every ruler. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how good or how bad you are, that bastard just gets us all.
Yeah. He literally takes over England on Christmas, dies before Easter.
Yeah. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, you get 5 whole weeks as ruler. It just goes to show that those British Isles are just absolutely dreadful. I mean, look at it. It's got to be negative to your health to take over, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very detrimental to your health. Fortunately for the Danes, and probably unfortunately for the English, Sven, despite being king for a very short time, does manage to produce an heir. A man who will go by the name of King Knut.
Hmm.
Now, Knut follows Sven. He secures the resurgence of the Danelaw. He makes sure it's not just a footnote in history. As the son of Sven Forkbeard and the grandson of Harald Bluetooth, he's got a bit of a legacy to live up to. And oh boy, does he, because he doesn't just become king of the Danelaw or king of England. He is king of the North Sea Empire. He holds the crown of England, Norway, and Denmark. He is crowned 3 times in his life.
Which not only is that impressive because that's a non-contiguous piece of land. I mean, Denmark is the little nodule on top of Europe. You have Norway, which is obviously where Norway is, and then you have England. The North Sea is some of the roughest seas in the world.
Yeah. This is an empire held together by water more than it is by land. It's one of the few empires that do this. The most famous and prosperous version of this is, I believe, Jakarta with the Indonesian Empire, where the land wasn't so much what they ruled as it was the waters between them. And that's kind of how things go here for King Knut and his North Sea Empire. He takes over England in the name of his father in 1015. He gets elected king in England in 1016. It's about as free as a Russian election, to tell you how it went. Um, pretty bad there.
Yeah, that is a pretty bad.
It's pretty bad there. And he remembers what Ethelred did to his aunt, so he decides to replace the English nobility with his own Danish one by systematically killing or exiling entire bloodlines. As a result of this, there's a lot of English people that flee to Normandy.
Hey, wait a second. I know how this one goes.
Yeah. He sets up the concept that the Normans, the lords of Normandy, would have an interest in England because for about 40 years, they have all these people that come into their land and start talking about how great England is and how much help they would be and how grateful it would be if you would just go over there and take it.
And it's really interesting because obviously not rules until 1035, but something very interesting happened shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Because within the next 30 years after his death,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
when good old Billy the Conqueror, William the Conqueror, comes sailing over the English Channel, and
It's Billy the Conqueror and William the Kid. We're gonna switch the naming convention.
Yeah, Billy the Conqueror and William the Kid.
Young Guns. Da
Oh
da
my
da da.
god. I mean, he was a sharpshooter of sorts.
Yeah.
This is the period of English history, though, that is very often and very seldom, I'm not going to say ignored because it obviously was paid attention to, but in reality, we know a lot about the Roman occupation of Britain.
Yeah.
We know a lot about the predecessors, the Stone Age era of Britain, because it was I'm not gonna say we know a lot, but it was very heavily studied, especially with Stonehenge. But that period, that interim period between William the Conqueror and basically Roman settlement, you have 700 years or so of just Viking invasions, Middle Ages, the rising Christianity in the area. I mean, it all
Yeah.
coincides.
Like the rise of the early English kings is very poorly understood, and the Danelaw represents the final metamorphosis of that. It's when the King of England becomes the title, and it's this cultural facet that England defines itself both around and against. And King Nut, for the most part, as this final act of the Danelaw, he is hugely influential for getting England recognized on the international stage. It's not just some island at the edge of the world fighting squalid little wars among itself. No, King Nut, he goes out of his way to meet and befriend the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, securing for England for generations the acknowledgement of those two entities. And even though, and a big part of why England gets to keep that after the Danelaw goes away, after William the Conqueror, after King Nut's death, is because King Nut and his court, they're very quick to anglicize. The Danelaw is still culturally in place. So they just become Danish people who speak English and eat English food, in air quotes there. As everyone knows, the English meal is not a particularly appetizing one.
This is where we get Yorkshire pudding from.
Yeah. And, that's kind of the history of the Danelaw. It's characterized by cultural acclamation and integration. The Danish people, they come in, they put in their weregild, they bring in a few of their customs, and then for the most part, they behave like good English lords. And that makes it last. That makes that makes for a strong integration. That's why Jorvik and Northumbria were so loyal to their Danish friends. And, you know, the Danelaw will continue 7 years after Nut's death. It lasts until 1042. Unfortunately for King Nut, his sons are kind of incompetents, and neither of them are able to maintain the great his great North Sea Empire. Neither of them are able to hold on to England. And in 1042, the political entity of the Danelaw is once again dead, and it persists for another 24 years before William the Conqueror comes in and puts an end to it once and for all, and begins this new era of the kings of England.
Really making it as British as could be, but it's a very interesting topic, and it's kind of cool to see how intertwined England is with a lot of the Scandinavian nations. I mean, they are very adjacent in a lot of ways, and geographically they are pretty close.
Well, they're kind of surrounded by it a little bit because, on your east, you got Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and then to the west, you have Iceland and Greenland. So the British Isles are kind of this little like anomaly in the middle of Nordic culture. This little like pseudo Celtic holdout.
It just also goes to show that nothing is unique. I know the sociologist and cultural anthropologists are going to hate me for this, but in reality, everything is very derivative. I mean, you see how these things evolve and transform, and they share a lot more commonalities, and that's where, getting on a soapbox for half a second here, but that's where I find having like racism or prejudice against a group to be kind of ridiculous, because you go far enough back, we're all interconnected, we're all intertwined.
Yeah. And you can see how well it went for Ethelred the Unready here, as he's the one who most defines himself on the difference between Angle and Dane, and it ends in a bloody, bloody, bloody affair. Things go super poorly for that man.
But I think that's probably a great point for us to wrap up this podcast episode. Let us know what your thoughts are down below, and be sure to let us know how much you would pay to free Aaron from the Pinkertons with your
Yep.
with your Weregild. And we will see you guys with the next episode, which, a little sneak preview, is actually going to be about the space race, man's mission to the moon.
That's right. We're coming to America, people. But in a fun way, not like Chris Columbus.
We're not talking about American colonization. No. We're talking about space colonization. We're going to subjugate the people of Mars. And on that note,
they say we're not right wing.
On that note, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, let us know, and we'll see you in the next episode.